I think it's pretty safe to say that everybody loves film. At least I do. So today, I've got something pretty much just as good. You've probably heard of Dehancer before, a film emulation plugin made for DaVinci Resolve. But they've also made plugins for Final Cut Pro, Premiere and After Effects, Lightroom, Photoshop, Capture One and Affinity Photo. They've also made 2 apps available on iOS, the Dehancer Color Test and the Dehancer Photo and Video Editor, allowing you to easily give your photos an authentic film look even when you're on the go. Quickly before we start, this video is sponsored by Dehancer, but everything I say in this video is my true and honest opinion. Before we're going to start grading, I'm going to quickly walk you through all of Dehancer's features. So I'm going to do my best to explain what each feature or slider does and how. This way, you hopefully have a good understanding of what everything does. When you've installed Dehancer, adding it to your project is very easy. I have a few test clips placed on my timeline, and I'm just going to navigate towards the color page. Then, in the effects library, I'm just going to find Dehancer and add it to my clip. And then when I scroll all the way down, you see the Check Profiles button. You want to click that, and then this window opens. It's going to load all the film stocks, camera profiles, and film print emulations. And when that's done, you click close and you're ready to go. When you add Dehancer to one of your clips, the first tab is the Input tab. Here, you can select your camera model and color space. This acts as a color space transform, so you can do your color management and your look all in a single node. Below that, you find some basic adjustments, such as exposure, temperature, and tint compensation, as well as a defringe option. These sliders act roughly the same as DaVinci Resolve's built-in adjustments, allowing you to even do your primary adjustments in Dehancer. The next tab is the Film tab. Here is where you can select the film stock you want to emulate. They have a ton of film stocks to choose from discontinued stocks to stocks that are still manufactured. And you will find a push/pull slider. This emulates chemically pushing or pulling your film. Pushing or pulling is when you shoot your film at a different ISO than intended, and compensate for that during developing by adjusting developing times accordingly. For example, a very common film to push is Ilford HP5, a black and white film. HP5 is a 400 speed film, so increasing your camera's ISO by 2 stops during shooting, so ISO 1600, and then pushing it 2 stops during developing will result in a final image with more contrast and visible grain. This slider emulates that process, so this won't affect your exposure, it will just increase or decrease the contrast and grain, and in the case of color films, saturation too. The Film Developer section gives you control over the individual characteristics of a film developing solution, like contrast and saturation that we just covered. These are determined by things like the concentration of the developing solution, the temperature of your solution, and developing times. And with these settings, you can control these things separately from each other and essentially creating your own developing solution. In the film compression section, you can give your digital footage a more film-like highlight roll-off, because film handles highlights very differently and the clipping of them occurs much later compared to a digital camera. And this lets you give the highlights that analog look, which also just looks very pleasing. Each film stock has a naturally different contrast, different black and white points. Film profiles in Dehancer sometimes lack a bit of contrast. This is done on purpose so that you have a lot more headroom for creative adjustments. So if your shot's contrast isn't quite right, you can adjust it with these settings. It's recommended to adjust expand immediately after choosing your film profile. And the color mode option can be useful if you encounter unwanted color shifts or oversaturation. In the Luma mode, expand only affects your luminance, so your adjustments to contrast won't affect the saturation. Then we have the print film section. Here you can select your film print of choice. By default, the linear option is selected, but you can choose between Cine on film lock, which for example allows you to use DaVinci Resolve's built-in film looks, and Fujifilm 3513 print film, of course the legendary Kodak 2383 print film, and Kodak Endura glossy paper, and of course some basic adjustments to control the look of your print film. Below that, you have the analog range limiter option. When this is turned off, the black and white points will be defaulted to the digital brightness values of 0 and 100. When you enable this, the black and white points will be adjusted to the values that were measured on the reference prints, resulting in a softer image with improved detail in the extremes of the tonal range. The color head feature is based on the analog correction tools found in photo enlargers and film scanners. The color head is represented with 3 complementary colors: yellow, magenta, and cyan. These behave very similarly to the printer lights built into DaVinci Resolve. You can also introduce those colors into the highlights, midtones, and shadows separately to create a split toning effect. Onto the film grain tab. Here you have the option to choose between different formats and film speeds, such as 8, 16, 35, and 65mm. A smaller format will naturally have a stronger grain, and essentially the same can be set for the film speed or ISO you pick. The options are 50, 250 and 500. The higher the ISO, the stronger the grain will get. Besides the available presets, there's also a customs option, where you can fine-tune the grain to exactly your liking. Halation is one of my favorites. Halation is an effect caused by light entering the camera that passes through the film and then bounces off the back of the camera back onto the film, causing these red glows around your highlights and bright areas. A lot of film stocks have anti-halation or remjet layers, but stocks like Cinestill 800T, which is just Kodak Vision 3 500T with the anti-halation layer removed, will give you these halations. And again, there's presets available, but you can also select the customs option for more control. Then we have bloom, which is kind of similar to halations, but it's generally a lens artifact, where you will get these soft glowing effects around highlights and light sources. This is caused by light dispersion within a lens, and typically a characteristic of older lenses. There's a bunch of settings which will allow you to adjust the strength and spread exactly to your liking. Dehancer also allows you to add film damage, which is exactly what it sounds like. You can add dust, hair, scratches, stains, and emulsion irregularities. And of course, you can adjust them all to look exactly how you like. Film breath is when the exposure, contrast, and color slightly changes per frame. This is caused by an uneven emulsion coating or development, instability of a camera shutter, and other deviations. To mimic these effects, they have created presets based on the 4 major film formats. The smaller the format, the more obvious the changes will be from frame to frame. And of course the customs option, if the format presets don't quite cut it. Gate weave is the mechanical movement of the film as it's pulled through the frame window of a film camera, basically meaning every frame is ever so slightly off-center. The jitter character is represented by the profiles of the 4 main film formats, including a custom mode to control all parameters individually. The overscan option allows you to include additional areas of the film. You can add the interframe space, perforations, and portions of the previous and next frame. The overscan effect includes a ton of film gates and aspect ratios for you to choose from. Keep in mind that the standard 16:9 aspect ratio is not included, since this doesn't exist on film. The closest film format to 16:9 is widescreen 35:185:1. And as always, there's plenty of options for you to get your desired look. Vignette is a familiar one. With this, you can add a vignetting effect to your image, with options to adjust the exposure, size, feather, aspect ratio, and the center of your vignette. There's even a mask mode, so you can see how the vignette is affecting your image. Most vintage lenses have a little vignetting to them, so this really completes that vintage look. The monitor tab is a pretty cool one. In here, you can check the false color box, and then you can precisely check your image's exposure. And with the clipping indication option, you can easily see what parts of your image are clipping in either direction. The next tab is the output tab. With this slider, you can adjust the total impact Dehancer is having on your image. This is essentially identical to playing with the gain in the key tab that is built into DaVinci Resolve. Note that you will not want to touch this slider if you're doing your color space transforms with Dehancer. Dehancer also allows you to easily generate LUTs from your grades. The input transform is by default included, so you can for example import them into your field monitor, or you can disable the input transforms altogether. You have the options to choose between 17x17x17 or 33x33x33 point LUTs, the higher naturally being more accurate. And when you're done, you simply hit export LUT. And lastly, there's an options tab. Here you can select the quality of your film emulations. Before rendering, I always put my quality on high. Keep in mind though, this quality is harder on your computer. And you also have a license info button, the check profiles button we covered earlier, and a disable all tools button, which as the name indicates, disables all tools. So let's get into it. I've got the 3 test clips ready on my timeline. So I'm going over to the color page, look for Dehancer in the effects library, and add it onto my clip. Then the first step is to do our input transforms. This footage was shot on my Sony a7 III, so I'm going to set the source to choose camera, then find Sony in the vendor drop-down menu, select my camera, which is the a7 III, and finally as format, select S-Log3 sgamut3.cine. With our input transforms done, I'm going to select a film stock. I'm a sucker for Kodak Ektachrome E100, so that's the one I'm going with. After that, I'm heading to the print film section and select Kodak 2383 print film and enabling the analog range limiter. And I'm just going to do a tiny bit of housekeeping and label this node Dehancer. I'm also going to enable film compression and slightly increase the tonal range. This clip is a little too hot for my liking, so I'm going to scroll back up to the input section and decrease the exposure by about half a stop. While we're here, I'm also going to adjust the temperature to make the image a little cooler and add a touch of green with the tint composition. Once we have our basic effects and settings, I'm going to adjust the black and white points in the Expand tab to dial in the contrast. It's quite common and actually recommended to revisit these throughout grading when adding or adjusting other effects. Since this is more of a clean grade, I'm going to disable the film grain. I'm also heading over to the color head and adding a teeny tiny bit of blue to the shadows and warming up the highlights ever so slightly to create a very subtle split toning effect. And I find the image to be a little bit too contrasty, so in the film print tab, I'm going to decrease the tonal range ever so slightly. It's still a little bit too bright, so I'm going to pull down the exposure by another quarter stop and add a tiny bit more green. Then I will create a new node and slightly bump the saturation of the skin tones to give them a little bit more life. And finally, I'm going to head back into Dehancer to enable the bloom, since it just looks great on any shot. And there you go, a pretty solid looking grade in just a few minutes. Normally I play around with the settings a little bit more, but for now this is fine. This is just to show how quick and easy it is to create a pretty nice looking shot in extremely little time. Then we're going on to the next clip. And again, I'll be adding Dehancer to my clip, and I'll be selecting the same input transform options as the previous one. Very original, but I'm going for Kodak Ektachrome E100 once again. In combination with Kodak 2383 print film, it is just one of my favorite looks. And for this one, I'm also going to enable the analog range limiter. What I had in mind for this shot is for the main source to be pretty blue, so I'm going to cool it off a good amount with the temperature compensation, and drag the tint compensation a tiny bit to the green side. That's looking great, but the skin tones are completely off now, so I'm going to create a new node, and with the qualifier, I'll make a selection of her skin tones. It's also automatically going to select her hair, which is actually perfect. And when I have my selection, I'm going to warm it up with the global offset. That's looking great, so now I'm going to create one more node, and with the color slice, I will bump the saturation of the blues a tiny bit to create a little bit more color contrast. Then back in the Dehancer node, I'm going to enable the film compression and adjust the black and white points in the Expand tab. For this shot, I'm thinking heavier grain, so I'm going to put the film grain on ISO 500. Plus I'm going to enable halation and bloom. And then maybe play with our saturation a tiny bit in the print film section. And that's done. A simple grade, but I'm quite happy with the result. And then we'll go to the final clip. Once again, I'll be setting the input transforms the same I did with the two previous clips. And right off the bat, I'm going to be raising the exposure compensation by about half a stop. Then we'll select our film stock, which is going to be Kodak Kodacolor 64, since we're going for a more extreme emulation and this was a very popular consumer film back in the day. After that, I'm going to adjust the tint and temperature compensation to neutralize the image a bit. And select the print film, which is going to be Kodak 2383. Very original, I know. And of course, enable the analog range limiter. I'm immediately going to lower the tonal contrast a little bit too. And I'll also enable the film compression again and increase the tonal range a little bit. I also want to add a little split toning effect, mostly some blues in the shadows, so I'm opening up the color head and then adding those blues into the shadows and warming up the highlights a little bit. I like this so far, but I think I want a little bit more color. So I'm going to create a new node and add the split tone effect, even though I just did the color head. I'm going to change the hue angle and check the protect neutrals box. Then to finish this off, I'm playing around with the strength and pivot until I'm happy with the result. And give the node a label for housekeeping. Finally, I'm heading back into Dehancer and enable halation and put the profile on Super 16. I do the same for bloom and film damage. And film breadth I'll be putting on the 65/70mm profile, since I don't want it to be that strong. I'm also going to enable gate weave and set it to the Super 16 profile. And for the last one, vignette, I'll enable it and adjust the settings a bit to only really affect the corners of the shot. Looking at it now, I find the blues in the shadows slightly too strong, so I'm dialing it back a bit. And we're done. Again, in a few minutes, a pretty good looking grade. And of course it could use some more work, but I think for a showcase this will do nicely. Besides professional grade plugins, Dehancer has also made a photo and video editor for iOS. So you have access to their beautiful and accurate film emulations no matter where you are. The app is simple to use and has all of the effects that are also present in their professional plugins. When you first open the app and import a photo, you will land on the presets page. The Dehancer team has also made a ton of presets for you to pick from, with legendary film stock and print film combinations. And if you're not feeling any of the presets, you can create one from your own edits. And when you head into the Edit tab, you will see that it has the same basic adjustments such as exposure, temperature, and tint compensation, with tons of film stocks for you to choose from, including the push and pull slider, the developer option, the film compression, expand for your contrast adjustments, the same print film presets with their respective settings, the color head, film grain, halations, bloom, vignetting, film damage, and of course the overscan. And on the top left, there's also a histogram where you can keep a close eye on your image's levels. If you're editing a photo and decide you don't want to use a certain effect anymore, you can toggle it on or off by clicking that effects icon one more time. If the effect is turned on, there will be a blue dot displayed above the effect icon to indicate whether it's toggled or not. And when you're done editing your photo and you decide you want to reuse these settings on other photos, all you have to do is head into the Presets tab again and hit the Save icon in the bottom left of your screen. You can name your preset and give it an author's name. And you can even share your presets with other people. The people over at Dehancer asked me to make this review video and give them feedback on how to improve Dehancer. I am glad, or sad, depends how you look at it, to inform that I don't really have any. I love it, plain and simple. And I really tried to find something that I don't like or rather would want to see differently. I was fairly sure beforehand that I would love the software since I'd been eyeing it for a while. It was just out of my budget. But I couldn't even find any constructive feedback for any of the features. Everything feels so complete, and what I like most is that every feature is grounded, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. See, I've been shooting a decent amount of film lately, and I've learned a lot about the process, from shooting it to developing myself. And the thing I probably love most is that nearly every effect and slider in Dehancer is some actual property of film. For example, the push or pull slider in the film tab. When pushing or pulling your film, you're not actually affecting the image's exposure, just the contrast, saturation, and amount of grain. And the slider in the film section behaves the same way. So it being accurate to how actual film behaves is a really nice touch and makes it feel very grounded and true to the real thing. And it's not just great for emulating film, it's incredibly versatile. If you need stunning film colors without all the film emulation effects, Dehancer's got you. With the included input transforms, and for each camera their own profile, so the transforms and emulation will be done accurately no matter what camera you shot on, makes it possible to lay the groundworks for any look or grade within one node. So, to the lovely people over at Dehancer, thank you for sponsoring this video, and I'm very sorry for not having any feedback for you guys. I truly love the software and I'm very grateful for this collaboration. If you've made it until this point, thanks for watching, and I hope this tutorial/review was useful. And goodbye.